everyone, and you're very welcome to the Business and Finance 2023 CFO 100 Index launch event in association with Sia Partners. Today, we'll celebrate the achievements of the Irish financial industry, which continues to thrive in spite of world events and the ever-changing business landscape. Business and Finance supports inspirational leaders through our series of Top 100 indices, and congratulations to all of you who are recognized through our CFO 100 today. We're going to be hearing some really interesting content that I'm sure you're all going to thoroughly enjoy. Shortly, we'll begin our panel discussion, where leading Chief Financial Officers will discuss our theme, How CFOs Can Lead the Strategic Cost Challenge. Our panel will reflect on challenges and opportunities, as well as future-proofing business. If you're tweeting, please use the hashtag CFO100 to be part of the online conversation. But first, I'm delighted to welcome David Cass, partner at Sia Partners, to introduce the panel.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Sia Partners are delighted to continue our partnership with Business and Finance magazine on the CFO 100 Index for 2023. The theme of our webinar this year is the Strategic Cost Challenge, and the CFO 100 Index celebrates Irish CFOs who are leading the way by constantly adapting, innovating and evolving to deliver business outcomes through turbulent times. The Irish business landscape has experienced a tumultuous period with rising costs, interest rates and inflation, record employment levels, and the continued economic impact and knock-on effects of Brexit and the war in Ukraine. CFOs are tasked with finding creative strategies to navigate these issues whilst maintaining standards, managing risk and supporting the business to develop and exploit new opportunities. The overall and underlying impact on CFOs through all of this is the constant need for flexibility, adaptability and versatility in operations. The shifting role of the CFO from scorekeeper to business partner and sometimes devil's advocate has put them in front and centre in driving strategy and enabling firms to benefit from new opportunities. The demands of stakeholders have shifted in this period too, with a much greater focus on ethical business practice, sustainability, ESG and social responsibility. The accurate and timely reporting of these practices is falling more and more under the remit of finance teams. Coupled with this change is the rapid development and adoption of new technologies, transforming not only how and where we work, but also how our jobs and roles will evolve in the future. The emergence of generative AI technologies will be a game changer across multiple industries, but the full potential impact is still only starting to be understood. Sia Partners play a leading role partnering with CFOs in this changing environment. And we have been helping organisations to reduce complexity, costs, and deliver innovative solutions in finance functions in Ireland, the UK and globally for over 20 years. We have seen CFOs adapting and responding to these challenges in a number of ways. A common theme, however, is a drive to move beyond efficiency challenges like growing at scale and reducing cost to more existential needs to redefine and rework core business models. Strategies to enable maximum flexibility and agility are being prioritised. In finance and business operations, for example, the cost of labour is less of an influence on where to locate finance centres. Availability of skilled people will be the key drivers going forward. In the future, finance teams will as easily come from tech and data background as from the accounting world, reflecting the growing influence of data and AI driving real-time decisions in the finance function. For offices and staff in the future, new ways of working are here for the long term. We are now seeing many organisations strategising for the office of the future in how they will use, grow or dispose of office space. For offices and staff, new ways of working are here for the long term. We are now seeing many organisations strategising for the office of the future in how they will use, grow or dispose of office space. Staff retention and flexible working policies will be key to future success as the workforce becomes increasingly mobile. For stakeholders and customers in this environment, they are demanding more, not less, from businesses. Sustainability, ethical practices and transparency have all moved centre stage in customer decisions to do business. The ability to track and cost the carbon footprint of operations for statutory reporting is starting to become increasingly important. New and emerging technologies are growing in influence. Blockchain, cryptocurrencies, generative AI and virtual worlds such as the metaverse are becoming more mainstream. Customers will expect more and more products and services delivered in this space. More traditional businesses are starting to develop services and products to compete with born-on-the-internet challengers. It is in this context that we celebrate CFOs and the role of the finance function in organisations. The CFO 100 Index for 2023, launched today, is made up of companies with diverse backgrounds, but these challenges are like a perfect storm, with no industry left untouched by change. For each of these CFOs, they are managing a level and a pace of change which is increasing all the time. I would like to congratulate all of the CFOs recognised in this year's index for the contribution they are making to their own teams and businesses. In our webinar, the panel will discuss the challenges and opportunities that CFOs face in this environment, as well as strategies and solutions for future-proofing finance teams and retaining customers. This panel features 3 very experienced CFOs across different industries, along with my colleague Lawrence Vesey, who will share the perspectives which we see across our client base in Ireland and the UK. Today on the panel, we have David Manifold, CFO at eShop World, Gina Laverty, CFO at Viatel Technology, Shauna Leach, CFO at CPL, and Lawrence Vesey, Partner, Sia Partners, UK and Ireland. I'm very much looking forward to this conversation and interested to hear our experienced panellists develop these themes further and provide insights from their experiences and industries. I'll hand you back now to Sarah Freeman, Managing Editor of Business and Finance magazine, to commence the discussion.
You're all very welcome and thank you for joining us here today. David, I'll come to you first if I may. You're the CFO for eShop World, an e-commerce and logistics management company that works with brands. Now, we're all familiar with the issues of the last few years: COVID, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the cost of living crisis. How did you navigate these extraordinary challenges?
Thanks very much, Sarah. Yeah, look, a very relevant question for the business of eShop World. You know, we've grown exponentially over the last 3 or 4 years. COVID certainly was a boon for the business, no question about it. If I look back on that period of time, we've grown 6x since 2019, from revenues of about 350 to 400 million to nearly 2 billion this year. So an explosion of growth, which has been experienced by the whole business. And I would say that that's been challenging for be able to manage that level of growth in that short period of time. First and foremost for us, obviously, our staff and our employees are at the forefront of everything that we do. We wouldn't have been able to overcome the challenges of the last 3 or 4 years of managing that growth without the dedication and hard work and the commitment of all the teams in the business. So I think in eShop World, we certainly put our staff and our staff welfare at the forefront of everything we try to do. We have obviously got teams, for example, in the Ukraine, and that's been a challenging time, obviously, for everybody in the last number of years in regard to what they've been going through. But you know, their welfare, when the crisis happened in Ukraine, for example, was the number 1 priority for this business, and it remains to be at this point in time as well. We're completely dedicated to looking after and maintaining the welfare of the staff that we have in Ukraine, and it's a commitment that we intend to honour. I think also as well is, you know, planning efficiently and allocating resources appropriately over the last 3 or 4 years has been crucial for us. Managing a cost base, even in a growth environment, it can be challenging. You know, there isn't a infinite level of resources available for any organization. So we've got to ensure that we devote the right level of resources that will basically give the right level of return on investment for those resources. And I think probably the last thing is, you know, leveraging on existing relationships. You know, our relations with our clients are more partnerships than relationships, and we're seeing the benefit of the effort and work we put in creating those relationships coming through the cycle of COVID and post-COVID, and still seeing the returns coming from those relationships we're seeing to this day.
Right, thanks, David. So people first and planning carefully. And Jeannie, if I could come to you, what issues posed the biggest challenge in recent years, and what were some of the solutions you came up with?
Absolutely. Well, similar to David's experience during the last couple of years, so many challenges, so many changes in our macro environment, but a period of really strong growth, both organically and acquisitively for Viatel. And so, you know, while that's very exciting and there's a lot of momentum and positivity around that, it comes with challenges internally as well as what you're operating against in the macro economic environment. And how we've really looked is to be as agile as possible. So, you know, that comes across in our processes, in our communication, in our interaction with customers, in our interaction with staff, and the communication with all of those stakeholders. So what can we do best? What can we do better? What can we do now? What's possible? And really keeping that agile flow of information going has really, really benefited us. And I think it speaks to David's point too on staff well-being, because against that, background I've described, you have a lot of people dealing with personal changes and personal difficulties through the period we've come through. And you've got to keep that in mind when you're not seeing people day to day like you used to. And you know, how do you tap into that? How do you understand it? And how do you still get the best from your people at the same time as balancing their well-being? So we've found that by keeping the structure as flat as possible, keeping the channels of communication really transparent and open and regular, you know, we're really able to do that. And also what we found is kind of incremental improvements. So, you know, innovation and digital transformation can be this sort of big bang effect that people seem to, you know, are seen to think they need to sit down and plan and scope and spend lots of money on. But where we've really seen amazing return is empowering people to make small incremental changes day to day, week to week, and then celebrating those a month or a quarter later. And you really see progress. And then you're able to do more, you're able to scale more efficiently, and leveraging people's ideas. We've done 8 acquisitions in the last 2.5 years. And what we have found is the ideas that come from the people in those acquisitions have been one of the most valuable, intangible assets we've acquired in that period. So really giving people the opportunity in the first quarter, in the first 100 days to, you know, put their hand up and say, we do things better where I come from. We do this, could it work here? And we've really, we've seen a lot of, you know, fun changes and innovations on the back of that.
Thanks, Una. So empowering people across the board, really. And Lawrence, I suppose same question to you. I mean, how did you approach the challenges of the last few years?
Thanks, Sarah. We've probably, in our business as professional services, seen 3 major challenges over the last 3 years. The first, obviously, was the pandemic and the change in ways of working and how we engage with our clients. Traditionally, we would have spent a lot of time on site with clients, and we obviously had to change and pivot in terms of how we've done that. And we believe we've done that well. We're a technology-based company ultimately, and a key skill that our staff have is being able to work in an agile way with clients. And we put investment into both the tools, but also greater upfront time in forming teams at the start of projects and start of engagements with clients to make sure that everybody can work well together and collaborate together. And some of the new tools we're exploring are things like the metaverse to see what areas they potentially can improve collaboration. So that, I suppose, has been ways of working. And we've seen our own clients significantly build their own capability to work in virtual teams over the last 3 years as well. The second one has been within our own business. We've become part of a global company back in 2020. So it's been interesting to get to know almost 3,000 colleagues across the world. And since we've become part of Sia Partners globally, there's been probably 8 to 10 acquisitions that have happened after we've become part of the business as well. So it's been a constant investment to build connections with our wider colleagues and make sure that as new services have come into the group, that we can also bring those services to bear to our own clients. And again, that's been a constant area of investment and focus to make sure that we're building those connections and we've got effective ways of working with a global team. And then the last part of our business really reflects the challenges and the concerns that our clients are facing. And whether they're in service industries or they're in manufacturing and distribution industries, there's been significant supply chain disruption and consequently inflation for our customers. And that's probably changed the nature of what's important for our clients. And it's also needed to change the focus of our work with clients. And maybe where a few years ago, there would have been a greater focus around improving customer service. There's a much stronger focus now around making sure that supply chain is solid and rigorous, and a really strong focus on cost management.
Right, Lauren. So agility again, and building connections and ensuring a secure supply chain, all very important. And Shauna, if I could come to you, what posed the biggest issues, I suppose, for CPL, and what solutions work best for you?
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, I think as a talent solution business, CPL we're lucky in that we have a multi-sectorial business mix, but we do see challenges. And as a talent solutions business, we're usually the first to see the effects of a recession. In the current climate, we are seeing that our clients are tightening up on spend. There's a little bit of uncertainty in the market, particularly around the tech sector. So we are seeing either hiring freezes or postponements, and that is challenging. On the other hand, we are seeing a shortage of candidates. We are seeing people stay in their roles. They're just reluctant to leave at the moment. And when we do find good candidates to move, the counter offers are phenomenal. So it is kind of fueling that salary inflation that we are seeing across the board. By way of combating this, we have a very clear vision on expansion into the UK, CEE, the DACH region, and we have made 2 acquisitions in the last year. One thing we do focus very much on across all of our divisions, from our healthcare, recruitment, talent solutions, and our BPO business, is cross-selling. And our teams work really closely together on finding really good and clever solutions for our clients. So it is about pivoting. It is about staying close to your clients and finding solutions to try and offset any oncoming headwinds.
Right, pivoting and finding solutions all sounds very good. David, if I could come back to you, Lawrence mentioned, ensuring a secure supply chain. When you're navigating difficulties, what focus do you put on future-proofing, and what form might that take for you?
Yeah, look, I think that's an appropriate question to be asking in the current climate that we're in. As we come out of a post-COVID environment, I think, as Shona said there, the reality is we are seeing a global slowdown in regard to demand that we've seen previously in the last 3 or 4 years, and it certainly couldn't have been maintained at the levels that we currently would have seen historically since 2019. For us, it's about investment priorities and where we replace that investment. Again, it's driven by the right level of return on investment that we can see, and the right kind of long-term values that we want out of the business. So we would break our portfolio down into short and medium and long-term projects. We're probably investing north of 50 million euros into our platform each year. So it's quite a considerable capital appraisal spend that we do. We have to ensure that obviously is consistent with the strategies that we set out based on those kind of short, medium and long-term timeframes, and staying close to our clients' needs and listening to our clients is the core to what the success that's happened in the business over the last 3 or 4 years. We're trying to navigate that kind of market-led environment strategy from a commercial point of view, where we try to prioritize both short and long-term needs. And when we talk about long-term needs for us, there's a responsibility on us as a business, from a sustainability point of view and an ESG point of view in regard to some of the values that we place on the business ourselves. And that's really core to what the beliefs of the business has. So I think that investment appraisal is really key for us going forward.
Okay, and Gina, is it the same with you, or do you take a different approach?
Very similar in many respects, in terms of market-led, what do customers need, what are the big tech trends that we're going to be able to take advantage of, get out in front of. And so we would look at it, the sort of all the P's when we're looking at what are we going to invest in, what are we going to double down on, what are we going to focus on. So we're looking at products, go-to-market strategy, we're looking at people investments and people, our staff loyalty, like Shona mentioned, and then we're looking at processes. So it's really sort of across those pillars, if you like. And from that, then we can prioritize where is spend needed, where is focus needed, where is expertise needed, is it in-house, is it external? And I think you get different sort of dividends and returns from each of those at different times and in different time scales. So you've got to decide, what do we need to do up front? What can we do on the fly as that revenue product starts to flow? What do we need to have ready to go, and what do we need to invest in? And I think, similar to points everybody else has made, we do see the people investment as really key to that. And we've probably benefited quite well from some of the uncertainty in the tech sector for employment, and that people are gravitating a little more towards, Irish-owned, independent tech businesses and thinking about long-term career opportunities rather than sort of jumping around for salary. So we're really working on that kind of loyalty piece, career opportunity, and letting people explore their passions as they relate to work. So again, like David mentioned, ESG is a really key focus, but it's a huge, broad topic. So what can we, tap into where people have real interests and knowledge, and then let them explore that. And then you sort of, you build that emotional attachment to work where people are proud of where they work, proud of what they've achieved, and they have a core day job as well. And when we look at process and systems, they've got to be robust, they've got to be scalable, they've got to be agile. And, that's always the question. And somebody I worked with many years ago was always in the back of my mind. Every conversation starts with, there's probably a better way to do this. And you may remain really open to that and keep making the changes.
Right. And Lawrence, how much emphasis is there on safeguarding the future?
That's kind of a tricky one insofar as, you have the immediate pressure of dealing with day to day, okay, which isn't necessarily longer term and future proofed. But what we find, and again, to echo the theme of some of our other speakers here, is listening to customers and watching where the market is going. And ultimately staying relevant to your customers is the key to safeguarding the future for every business, and our own business very much so. And one thing we've seen across a range of industries is that the pandemic has really helped to shift service models and logistics, and it's also changed customer expectations. So I think listening to customers is key. To achieve that, really then you need to be prepared to look at ongoing investment. And that's difficult when you're trying to manage costs day to day. But it's really kind of self-defeating not to look at what ongoing investment is needed and then to pick the right areas. So some of it will be into technology, so digitizing processes, advanced manufacturing, but also into training staff and making sure that, to retain staff, but also to make sure that their own skills stay relevant. And then finally, longer term, the fundamental sustainability, and this is ultimately looking at carbon footprint. And in some industries there is challenge, there is concern about adapting to it, but the reality is that the direction of travel is clear, and ultimately whether it's EU or government policy, it's going to drive it. So you either get dragged into it reluctantly, or you plan for it and are ready to move in a way that's managed for your particular business. And that's what we're seeing both for our own business as well as for our client businesses around kind of safeguarding the future.
Right. Thanks, Lawrence. And Shona, where do you stand on this? Is there a way to future-proof the business effectively?
Yeah, I think all the points are very valid that have been made. Of course, it's about investment, looking at what your clients want. But, I'm also really heartened to hear the focus on people. As a very people-centric business, CPL have been operating for 33 years, and we believe the secret sauce is strong leadership and looking after your people. Attracting people is difficult. We are finding that people are looking for quality of boss, quality of life, work-life balance. They're looking to understand what the company's vision and culture is. And people have talked about ESG. That's becoming increasingly important for staff. And retaining these people by making them feel trusted and empowered and listened to, and providing excellent training. I really do believe that is the way to future-proof the business. It is about our people, and it is about having strong leadership. People want to be led, they want to be inspired, they want to see that vision, and they want to really work for a boss who's going to work as hard, if not harder than them. And ultimately, I believe if you look after your staff and your candidates, they will look after your clients, and that will future-proof your business.
So I'd like to change tack slightly. David, as CFO, you're at the vanguard of leading the strategic cost challenge. How do you go about ensuring standards are maintained and growth targets are met, while also balancing competing demands of short-term financial performance and long-term strategic goals?
Yeah, look, I think that comes back to the point of investment appraisal and really putting the tight governance structures in regard to that, to ensuring that you get the right level of returns both in the short and long term. We would have seen, from the investment we put into our platform and our solutions for our clients pre-COVID, by putting that work in and having those hard yards that period of time, that it paid huge dividends for us when the market opened up, and we're a demand-led organization. So we try to have a diverse portfolio in regard to that investment that not just meets the needs or returns for the next 3 to 6 months, but we're constantly looking out to the market for the next 6, 12, 24, 36 months. It's a very dynamic market, so you have to really keep very close to your clients to understand exactly where their needs are and really where you can continually add value in a competitive marketplace. And that's where you really want to invest in. We've certainly found that by making that kind of level of investment, we've seen margin returns and enhanced margin returns in some areas, which has been great for us. At the same time, you've got to put the right kind of structure in place for us when we reach that kind of scale we have reached and coming into a different economic environment to ensure you get the right level of cost efficiencies that you should achieve by putting the investment and scale into the business. And that's clearly a focus for us now in regard to quite across the whole platform, as every business is looking at their whole value chain of where can we actually eke out more cost savings, but still maintain the right level of service and the right level of excellence to our clients. Because at the end of the day, as I say, we're a client-led organization and they're at the heartbeat of everything that we do.
Okay, thanks, David. And Gina, how do you balance those competing short-term and long-term demands?
I think the key, and probably in all our roles and functions that we do day to day, is data. And it's an opportunity and a challenge, like a lot of things. There's a proliferation of data available now in any organization, coming at you from all angles, be it to do with the market, be it to do with your clients, be it to do with your costs, be it to do with your run rates, supply chains, everything. But I think the onus is really comes back into the finance team to partner with the rest of the business to collate that data, understand that data, digest that data, and sort of spit it back out then into the relevant parts of the organizations to enable that prioritization and investment decision. And it's challenging because I think the role of the finance org and accountants and CFOs has changed in line with that, and that comes in tooling, it comes in, how we use Excel and, how much you keep in basic Excel and how much you can get out into really fast moving tools that can make decisions and help enable decisions in real time. So yeah, for me, it really sits on the data. And then from there, you can enable the planning, you can enable the decisions, and then really push hard on scenarios. So always having your best and worst case scenarios, knowing where your levers are, and then you can kind of stand firm during the investment cycle because you know what data you're measuring, you're on track. And if you're not on track, you have sort of other backup plans and you have other levers you can pull to keep kind of marching towards the destination. So yeah, it's really that evolution of the finance function to digest the data and partner with the whole organization. I think that also enables transparency of decisions. So you make a decision to invest in something and not something else gets prioritized, something else must get deprioritized. But I think if people can see why, they'll buy in and keep going with you. So that's key for me.
Okay, thanks, Gina. And Lawrence, when you're advising companies, what tips do you give them in terms of creating a cost strategy? And is there a balance to be found between managing rising costs and maintaining standards?
So for some of our customers in life sciences and food production, standards really can't be compromised. You will go out of business if you compromise standards. So in the short term for those customers, rising costs have to be either absorbed or passed on. And ironically, in a higher inflation environment, it's actually been easier for some of our customers to pass on costs, but that's not really sustainable the longer term. So medium term, what we're seeing, and to reiterate maybe what Gina was saying there, there's 3 areas that we see our customers working on. One is around finding alternative suppliers and better procurement negotiation to manage costs. And our data analytics team often can help procurement specialists to focus on data points for negotiation there. Second key area, again, is very much data driven. It's around process improvement to reduce wastage and drive up utilization. And that ultimately will give you a better cost base. And that applies to both service industries as well as manufacturing. And key expertise and tools here that our team brings are techniques such as Lean and Six Sigma. But again, you need to have data to drive all of that. And then longer term, you're probably looking at redesign of products and services. And I think in the wider context of sustainability, that's probably going to be the most effective way of looking at that. And some of our team have design thinking methodologies that can be very effective here at looking at the entire service and product propositions for clients. And that ultimately will drive the basis of digitizing business processes as well. But all of those ultimately are data driven. So very much would agree with what some of the other panelists have been saying around this.
So data really is the new gold. And Shona, how do you deal with these issues? Are there particular strategies that a CFO might use to mitigate the impacts?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that it's always good to have your mechanics in place. So a good, strong finance team who are able to manage and understand the data. But I think Gina mentioned business partnering. That's exceptionally important. We have to be close to the business. We have to be close to our business leaders to understand the market and to help them navigate the numbers and understand what they mean. So I think a really highly functioning team is imperative. Other things we do, it's very easy to look at the soft costs and to cut them in a time of crisis or pressure. I think we need to be careful, particularly in our new environment of ESG and D&I. It's really important to not cut too fast. It's important to manage resources. I mean, fixed costs are fixed. We need to manage our headcount. We need to manage our productivity. We carefully hire. We don't like to do hiring freezes. We hire where it's going to really add value to the business. And in terms of looking at process improvements, we do run a very extensive Lean Six Sigma program in CPL. We've probably recruited or probably trained over 150 people at this stage, and we have the majority of them at yellow belt status. And we look at ways of driving efficiencies in all processes, both in our back offices and for our clients. And this has proved highly effective. And it's also allowed us to think of ways to commercialize back office functions. So while we are trying to drive growth in these areas, we are managing the costs as well. But it is a tightrope. And I think that staying close to the business, understanding the trends in the market, and what we want to achieve in the short, medium, and longer term will enable us to know when to pull these different levers.
Okay, and David, just to explore Shona's point a little bit there, how do CFOs balance the need to adhere to traditional KPIs like profits while simultaneously meeting new KPIs like employee wellness, like Shona mentioned, and sustainability targets, which can slow progress?
Well, for us, exactly what Shona said, I think for us, we definitely would balance between short-term and long-term KPIs that add value and focus in on the enterprise value of the business. I think we're all pretty familiar on the call what the normal financial KPIs you would evaluate a business plan or a budget or an individual business themselves on, tailored to a business needs, and I think we're pretty au fait with what that looks like. But I think now what we're looking for is what focus on the value of the business, and that's probably for us is our brand and our employees, and they're the kind of softer KPIs that we're building into our business plans now, and really putting the targets down for ourselves to measure ourselves on in regard to what we want our brand to be, what we want it to mean, but also that sense of belonging for an employee into an organization. We've certainly seen in the last number of years the benefit of the welfare and focus on staff retention being really key to our success. We certainly couldn't have done what we've done in the last 3-4 years without the key individuals performing at the high level and wanting to be here and wanting to stay here. And that's pretty fundamental for our success going forward.
Right, and Gina, I saw you nodding there. Is that something you've experienced of? I mean, have you had to balance those equally important concerns?
Exactly that. I think balance is the key word. And for me, there is a direct linkage, I suppose, between, if you like, the new KPIs and the traditional KPIs. And I think we've, fortunately moved away from seeing, investing in wellness and ESG as some sort of must-do sunk cost. I think we measure that now, but we see the impact on other KPIs. So how we look at it is we look at the KPIs in the round and we build links between them. So while you may see one as a cost and an investment, you're going to see an offsetting uplift in another KPI. So you're going to see, speed to market, efficiency and process, improvement in supply chain, decrease in churn for your investment in some other area. So for me, it's sort of linking between all the KPIs and they should be offsetting each other and accelerating growth at the end of the day.
Right. Thanks, Gina. And Lawrence, I mean, is that something that you're seeing on the ground, that companies are having to grapple with this?
Yeah, I suppose, not to repeat some of the other points, but a phrase that was popular back in the 90s was a balanced scorecard, and in many ways that's effectively kind of what we're talking about here. Definitely would agree with what everybody else has said here around employee wellness and diversity, and maybe traditionally that might have been the role of a HR function, but employee attrition is expensive. So there is a very strong financial dimension here, which impacts the finance teams. I think maybe the other point is there's the wider ESG measures, environmental sustainability, governance, and that's increasingly important. Some of it is legislation driven, but it's also competition and investment driven. And having good ESG reporting, you really need to have a strong insight into the non-financial aspects of supply chains and all of the activities that feed into product and service. And that's not just within your own organization, but also upstream with your suppliers. And this is going to be increasingly driven, we think, by common taxonomies in terms of measuring data. It'll make reporting comparable. So there's going to need to be new skills here around capturing and reporting that data. And I think ultimately the companies that do this well, to David's point, it will reinforce and build the company's brand. So I think that's going to be increasingly kind of a key area of measurement for finance teams across every industry.
Right, thanks, Lawrence. And Sean, I suppose you'd be particularly familiar with the requirements of today's job seekers, namely transparency and accountability. How would you advise CFOs to balance these?
This is a really important matter. I mean, we do have a lot of legislation, as we've mentioned, coming in. We've had the gender pay gap last year, and in 2025, we have a new corporate sustainability directive coming in. And at CPL, we spend a lot of time preparing for these things. What we have done in CPL, and what I would suggest for CFOs, is to get ahead of it. Employ some outside expertise. It's quite daunting. Focus on 2 or 3 things you can really make a difference in, and put in a good employee assistance program. And I think all of these things will support the sustainability and the DE&I program. For us, we see this as a real competitive advantage. So again, managing the quantitative KPIs, what we can really deliver out of this. We notice in a lot of the public procurement processes, about 10 to 15% of the marks of that process go towards having a really robust sustainability vision for your organization. So we see this as an advantage, that we have this and that we are very committed to it, and we're very vocal about that. So I think that, yes, managing the KPIs, but looking at the softer aspects of them will definitely lead to generation of growth in the future.
Okay, some really useful insight there. Thanks for that, Shona. Well, we've time for one last question. David, if I could come to you first, is there one piece of tangible advice that you would like to share with our audience, something practical that maybe they can action in their own companies?
Yeah, for me, probably, I think it was echoed earlier on, is that the importance of data and facts. You can make appropriate decisions in any environment or in any economic climate without the right level of facts and truth. And I think that for what we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, establishing the right consistent level of data as a benchmark to be able to make the appropriate either investment or capital decisions or market-led decisions, it really is all about the right level of data, and having that consistent flow of data right through the business is something that I think is key for any business in the challenges that we're facing at the moment.
Okay, very useful. And Gina, is there a piece of advice you might like to share?
Sure. One thing we find to be really useful in recent times and making difficult decisions is always have a devil's advocate in the room. Sometimes naturally a team will always have one, but they should be really sort of encouraged and empowered. And if a team maybe naturally doesn't have one, somebody should always feel very open and empowered to be that devil's advocate that day, because there's just nothing like stress testing a decision and really, putting the other points of view on the table. Even if you don't agree with them, let's put them out there and discuss them, and everyone can walk away feeling like we've discussed everything and we've made the best decision we can. So yeah, we really encourage that presence of a devil's advocate at all our meetings.
Really interesting, and something actually that people can put in place literally almost immediately. And Lawrence, what about you? Is there advice you might like to share?
Get the data, understand the data, challenge the data, act on the data, and get help if you need to.
Data driven, absolutely. All right. And Shona, what about you?
I would say it's really important to stay close to the business. Have a good, strong finance team in place, empower them to business partner the business and to challenge the numbers. But I do think it's important to stay close to the business and support the decision-making process. And actually to be brave in your own decision-making. As CFO, you have a lot of influence over the organization, and people do rely on what you have to say. So if decisions are made even by you and you may think we need to change, don't be afraid to make those tough decisions and change, because we don't know what's going to happen next. We can only plan now for what we think is the best thing. So, challenge the business, but challenge yourself and be a bit brave.
Oh, that's a very positive note to end on. I think be brave. I'd like to thank our panelists, David Manifold, CFO eShop World, Gina Laverty, CFO Viatel Technology Group, Lawrence VC, Partner UK and Ireland Sia Partners, and Shona Leach, Chief Financial Officer at CPL. And now, for the reason we're all here, I'm delighted to launch the CFO 100 Index 2023 in association with Sia Partners. We'll now reveal the full index, and you can also find it on businessandfinance.com. Don't forget to use the hashtag CFO100 to be part of the online conversation. From all of us here at Business and Finance, goodbye for now, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon.